Hi, this is Congressman Tom Cole, the 4th District of Oklahoma, and this is another one of our weekly congressional chats. This has been an interesting week for a couple of reasons. First, the president unveiled his latest proposal, the American Family Relief Plan, and a $1.9 trillion spending binge. And he also had his first address to a joint session of Congress. Let's take those in reverse order. The address was, frankly, a privilege for me. I had a chance to not only be on the floor, and the majority members were not. We socially distanced, and most members couldn't come. But I served as Republican leadership in the Republican leadership, so I had an opportunity to actually, escort the president in, which means you meet with him just before the speech and have a chance to take a picture and have a quick word, and so that was a privilege. The speech itself was very unusual. Normally, the chamber is packed, the Supreme Court is there, the diplomatic corps is there, the Joint Chiefs of Staff are there. Obviously, just about every member of Congress, Senate, and House is there. The galleries are full. We didn't have any of that. There are, normally about 1,500 people between the floor and the galleries. It was limited to 200, so it was pretty eerie this time. And I had to reflect, it must have been unusual for the president. First of all, he sat through a lot of these things as a United States Senator and as Vice President over the years, but he's never been the main center of attention. Last night he was, but it wasn't like any other one that he'd ever been through. So, I thought he did what I would call a workmanlike job. I've heard there've been some great orators, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan. Those people are really outstanding speakers. I think the vice president or the president is not quite in that league, and I think he'd be the first to tell you that. But he laid out his program effectively, hit a couple of important points where we all agree. We're all glad to see that the vaccine is being widely distributed and people are responding to it. And if you're listening to this and you have not yet had your vaccine, if you have an opportunity, I would really urge you to do that. I think it's important for you and for your family and friends. And I also think it's important for our country that as many people get vaccinated as quickly as possible. And so we're all pleased with that. And he noted the economy's opening up, and it is. It actually began to open up in the third quarter of last year. Really, the president inherited an economy that was on the move, adding more jobs and rebounding from the depths of the COVID crisis. But that's continuing and accelerating. I expect it will for the next few months. So those are things we should be optimistic about and celebrate as Americans. In terms of the program he laid out, I have to tell you I was pretty disappointed. Frankly, it's a massive spending program with massive tax increases, and it runs the risk of actually derailing the economic recovery that the president was celebrating last night. If you actually look at the first 100 days, President Biden has already proposed over $10 trillion in spending, about a $4.5 trillion annual budget, then $1.9 trillion for the COVID relief package that he passed without a single Republican vote. And he's also proposed $2.3 trillion for an infrastructure plan that, frankly, even Democrats have doubts. Right now, I don't think they have the votes to pass it, certainly not through the United States Senate. And then, of course, last night, another $1.9 trillion. That's a lot of money, and it has to come from somewhere. And frankly, I've seen a graph that of all the additional spending, that is better than $6 trillion on top of the annual budget, the president has proposed only $2.1 trillion is covered by tax increases. Those tax increases, I think, are pretty unacceptable. I think they would inflict a lot of economic damage, but we would still assume an enormous amount of additional debt that we don't need. I mean, again, the economy is recovering now, jobs are being added. This extra spending runs the risk of setting off an inflationary surge. So I think the months ahead, we're going to be debating, frankly, the Biden spending programs. The other thing that we did not hear last night, but we ought to always be talking about, is the crisis on the border. I mean, that's something that the president honestly is responsible for. The border was pretty secure when President Trump was there. President Biden changed all the policies, didn't add any new resources, didn't add any new policies, didn't build any new facilities. all of a sudden we have an unprecedented surge across our border. And that's not just of people, it's also of drugs and human trafficking and crime as well. So it's a first-class disaster, and it's of the president's own making. I was hoping we would hear something about that last night. We really didn't. As a matter of fact, I don't think it's an accident that neither the president nor the vice president has visited the border. They would prefer that Americans not see what's going on there, because it's pretty clear that the policies they enacted have caused a humanitarian crisis of enormous proportion on our border and frankly within our country. So I regret that very much, but that's going to be a matter of great contention. The other thing that I think you'll see, going forward, we didn't talk about last night, but the president did talk a lot about competition with China. That's a good thing. We are in a competitive situation with China. But he forgot to mention that while China's rapidly building up its military, he proposed an inflation-adjusted cut for the U.S. military in his budget. That's a mistake. We have Russians massing troops on the Ukrainian border to intimidate all of Europe. We have China flying airplanes into Taiwanese airspace to try and intimidate them, challenging us in the South China Sea. And the message that both the Chinese and the Russians would understand is a renewed American commitment to defense. We made a lot of progress under President Trump in restoring and rebuilding the military, but that needs to continue. We're not where we need to be yet. So I wish the president had taken a stronger stand, and I actually think that will be one of the points of contention as we go forward in the months ahead where his budget is concerned. So let me just end with this. It's early days. The president's been in office, I think, 100 days today. He had one big victory for him. That's the coronavirus bill, but no Republican support. He's got other major proposals out there. Again, his American Families Plan and his infrastructure proposal. I think those are going to have to change considerably if there's going to be any chance for that. And, there's some other areas we could work on together, police reform. But again, I think they're going to have to move to a different set of proposals than they currently have on the Democratic side to get Republican support. So the hard task of governing has begun, and we'll just keep working at it, see if we can deliver for the American people. But first and foremost, we want to protect their liberties, make sure that the economy keeps growing, and make sure that we have the kind of defense that deters any potential adversary any place in the world. And those are the things I'll be working on going forward.